Okay, here we go. This is Garrett, tears2joyministries.org. This video is called Something Strange Happened at Our Last Bible Study. I go to a Bible study once a week or once every 2 weeks. And I don't run the Bible study. I'm not the leader of the group. My friend is. And we all met on the phone. This Bible study is on the phone. We all meet on our cell phones. We use conference call software. And before the leader of the group showed up, some of the men were talking about suffering. They were talking about the topic of suffering. And I want to tell you right now, I was not happy with what I was hearing. Now, let me explain. The Bible study had not started yet. My friend who runs the Bible study did not show up on the phone yet. So some of the men were just talking, just chit-chatting back and forth. And one of them was saying that God doesn't have us go through suffering for a long time. And when I heard that, I said, whoa. But I kept quiet because this is not my Bible study. I'm not the leader. But he was saying that God doesn't have us go through suffering for long periods of time. Children of God, nothing could be farther from the truth. Nothing. God has some of his children maybe go through a migraine headache for 1 week. He has other of his chosen ones maybe suffer with the flu for a month. I've been going through that for a long time. Then he has other people suffering for even a couple years. Then God has other people suffering maybe with cancer, maybe paralyzed, maybe in a wheelchair for even decades. I don't know where this guy thought on the phone that God doesn't have us go through suffering for a long time, but that's terrible preaching, and that is completely wrong. Some of you might know I have a very special friend in Romania. She is born again, she's walking with Jesus, and she has had cancer for almost 12 years now. Think about that. She's had cancer getting close to 5,000 days. Every single day she has to live in this terrible situation of living with leukemia. Every single day getting upwards of 5,000 days. How on earth can anybody say that God doesn't have us go through suffering for long periods of time? That's completely untrue. Even Paul himself was in jails and prisons for very long periods of time, actually. Wow. Then you might want to go to the Bible and maybe take a look at Jacob. Jacob had to work really hard for 7 years to marry his wife. Then his father-in-law tricked him, gave him the wrong daughter on purpose, and then Jacob had to work another 7 years for the woman that he actually wanted to marry. You're talking about 14 years of hardcore work, working outdoors with the animals. Now, I call that suffering, 14 years of suffering right there. Let's look at the Jewish nation. After they crossed through the Red Sea, Moses lifted up his staff. God parted the Red Sea supernaturally. The Jews walked through on dry land. Very shortly after that, they had to roam through the desert for 40 years of suffering. 40 years of walking in circles. 40 years. But what if we were to back up a little bit? Let's go back to the Jewish nation. Do you realize they were slaves in Egypt for 400 years? 400 years. These Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, working hard every day, working harder than most of us could ever realize. Imagine that, 400 years, God had them go through suffering. Just think about that. Do you know that 400 years equals 14,600 days of suffering? I know for myself, I've gone through suffering from about the age of 5 all the way to the age of 51, where I am right now. The suffering goes away for a little while, then it comes back, it goes away, then it comes back, over and over and over again like clockwork. I've been going through suffering for 45, 46 years now. I've got a friend who lives in California. He got married about 10 years ago, approximately, maybe 9 years ago. Their marriage is so hard and so difficult. He goes through suffering every day for 8 or 9 years now, almost every single day of suffering. So I'm not sure where some of the guys in our Bible study got the idea that God doesn't have us go through suffering, but nothing could be farther from the truth. Nothing at all. Wow. All right, I pray this short video has blessed you and that it's just going to help to change your theology. You might hear me stuttering a little bit. I'm still sick. My chest is acting up. I'm going through suffering. Anyway, I pray this video has blessed you. Yes, God has almost all of his children. Almost every single person on earth goes through suffering. Some for a week, some for a month, some for a year, some for 10 years, some for 30, 40, 50 years. Oh, yes, he does. God does this. All right, be blessed.